New Year and welcome back to the Cat Scrappiness channel. My name is Marla. Today I am sharing this bouquet or bokeh card featuring products from Cat Scrappiness. Let's jump into the products. I'm starting with this stitch scallop heart. I'm using the second largest heart. The Koala-Ty time, I'm using the koala on the tree, and then the sentiment. This doily stencil from Tim Holtz. I'm using some Catherine Pooler inks in Coral Cabana, Be Mine, It's a Girl, and Samba. Some Hero Arts Unicorn White Pigment ink, Hero Arts Clear Embossing Powder. I'm not using that stamp pad. I do end up stamping my image out using Memento Tuxedo Black ink. I have a piece of Nina Solar White 80-pound cardstock, and I'm going to do a little bit of ink blending with these Catherine Pooler inks. They blend beautifully. I have the Be Mine, which is kind of like a picked raspberry color. One of the things that I notice is that the colors look splotchy on screen, but when you see the final photo, you're going to see how beautifully blended this is. That being said, I'm coming in with Samba. You don't need a perfect ink blend for this technique. I'm just basically laying down color. I happen to love the way that the Catherine Pooler inks work together and how well they blend. So I am using the Coral Cabana in the middle, looking for kind of an ombre effect, and I'm finding that the Coral Cabana, when I'm putting it down, and the Samba are very similar. There's just a slight variation in the two shades. So I am going to remedy that by adding a little bit more of the Be Mine to the Samba at the very bottom. I'm going to do a second coat here of the Be Mine, which is that pink color at the top, and then I'm going to add it as well to the bottom. As I said, you don't need a perfect blend for this bokeh technique. I did take 3 of the circle dies that I had in my stash. Now, Cat Scrappiness does carry nesting circles, and she has a fabulous set that has lots of variation in sizes. In fact, I wish I had that set. There I dried my panel. I wanted to make sure it was very dry before I brought this pigment ink to the panel because you don't want to pick up that color. So I am using the stencil that I made, and I am just going to randomly put these circles down. I'm being pretty heavy-handed with this first application. Back to the Cat Scrappiness dies. She has a very small one in there, and I wish that I would have had one more of the smaller circles. So those have definitely went onto my list. I will link those in the description box below, along with all of the other Cat Scrappiness products that I'm using. As I continue with this stenciling, all I'm doing is obviously putting my little ink dauber into the pigment ink and taking the stencil and using that circular motion to get that beautiful circle. I'm making sure that I'm filling lots of space. I'm overlapping some of the circles. And then you're going to see, as I'm using this smaller circle, that I am not always putting it back into the ink pad. So I'm trying to get a little bit of a softer look. You don't want to have the same depth of color with each of the circles. So you can see that they look a little bit more cloudy, I guess I would say. They're a little lighter, not quite as defined around the edges. And I think that this is a quick and easy way to make a beautiful background. I love this effect. It's so beautiful. See how light those are coming out? Now I'm going to stamp my little koala bear. I'm going to show you the coloring of the koala bear's head because basically the rest of his body was using the same method. I'm using an N7 marker, which is a gray, and I'm putting my darkest shades on the left and right side of his face, around the inside of his ear, where his ear meets his head. I will turn this around so that you get a little bit of a better look at this coloring process. But when I add the next color, it's going to be an N5, and I'm just going to bring those lines out a little bit more. I'll leave a lot of white space and finally come in with an N3 to finish that off. For his body, I used his or her, I think it's a her. For her body, I used E55, I used E53, 50, and 51 to get a little bit of a buff tone. Not all koala bears are completely gray. Some of them do have a little bit of a buff color on their stomach. I started with my lightest markers, the E50 and 51 and 53, and I realized that I still needed a little bit more contrast. There's a lot of shadowing. His body is the arm is overhanging the stomach, so underneath that area is going to be a little bit darker. Where his head meets his chest is going to be a little bit darker. So I wanted to add that additional contrast, and that's why I do end up bringing in the E55. I color the quokka's nose using an N7 and an N5. And then when I come back to the ears, I'm going to use N0. I'll color the entire ear with the N0, the inside. And then E4 is a pink brown. So I will add that pink brown and then go over it again with the N0. And I think that this is just an absolutely adorable stamp set. I love all of the Australian critters that Kat has in her store. She has a kangaroo, she has the quokkas, she has a koala bear. They're fantastic stamps, and this one is new to me, and I think that it's just absolutely adorable. So I've cut the heart out using the Stitch Scallop die, the heart die, and now I am using the It's a Girl ink to ink blend that doily stencil over the heart. Then I'm taking the Coral Cabana, and I have this strip of paper that's a little bit larger, a little bit wider than the 4 1/4 that I need. And I'm going to use that to help build my sentiment. To add more interest to the strip, I did spray it with water. The Catherine Pooler inks are water reactive, and now I am going to dry it. I did have a little strip left from this cut down right here of the bokeh. I cut my panel down to 4 by 5 1/4, and I thought that I was going to use it. See on that right side, I thought I was going to use that for my sentiment to kind of adorn the center of that piece that I just ink blended on. And I did the stamping off screen. I actually had the footage, but I cut it out, and it ended up being a little bit too small. So some of the letters when I did the heat embossing just didn't show up. You will see that in the background. You're going to see that little bit of sentiment underneath what I put on top. So now to remedy that, I have cut another piece of cardstock. This is just some scrap cardstock, and I'm going to do some ombre stamping. So I will snip this where I need it, and then I'll take my paper trimmer out and make sure I get a clean cut. And then I'm going to use the Be Mine, the Coral Cabana, and the Samba all the way across, left to right, to get an ombre effect on my sentiment. I'll bring in the clear Hero Arts embossing powder, run that over the top of it. I'll put some foam adhesive to the back of that. I'm also going to add some foam adhesive to the back of my koala bear, and just like that, that is my finished card. I did put my card panel on to a piece of Nina Solar White 110-pound cardstock. I want to thank you for joining me today, and until next time, have a fabulous day.